But I think education will be okay if we focus on educating kids, not trying to raise them. And some of these issues are parenting issues.
Raising is the job of the parents.
That's right.
Education is the job of the
Absolutely.
schools. Now, talk to me about the right of parents to decide what kids learn in school. I mean, I would think it's common sense that what parents want their children to learn, and they should be vocal about that. But more recently, the administration has targeted parents who show up at teachers' meetings, at board meetings for the school boards, and called them domestic terrorists for wanting to be involved in their children's education.
Shameful. Everything about it was shameful, and
arresting parents, arresting people.
Yeah, this kind of grew out of the shutdowns, right? All of a sudden, parents were seeing the content that kids were being taught. Right. Our kids are in private. I was surprised with some of the stuff around the time of the riots that they had the kids reading, poems about cops, and honestly, even
in a private
school, So Parents would like to think that they can count on the school districts to teach things the right way, teach the basics, drill down on the basics, inspire and motivate their kids academically, not on the social experimentation stuff, but academically. But they can't. That not anymore in society. This has gone too far now. You can see that the public school establishment wants to dig in deep with this stuff.
Right.
Now,
doing away with merit. Doing away
completely.
With merit, right?
If they had their way completely, just like with the teachers. I mean, they did away with it with merit, a couple of decades ago. And so now the next thing would be for the kids.
Right.
And ultimately, I don't think that's what people want for their children.
Dumbing down of our society.
Absolutely. Why would you ever want your kids to accomplish less than their natural abilities, and the determination equals them being able to do?
Well, you might want them to accomplish less, because if they accomplish more, it'll hurt the feelings of somebody else.
Unbelievable.
Right? Hurting feelings has become so important. I don't remember when I grew up, we had an expression when somebody try to make you feel bad. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Yeah. What happened to that? What happened to that? Now, names and name calling, whatever. It's very hurtful, and it's it's an unpleasant environment, and I got to report you to the principal. So we're in trouble in the schools, and the only good thing that came out of COVID and the shutdowns is what you're talking about. The parents saw what the kids were learning and are objecting to it. It was stealth. It was stealth.
Yeah. You know what I think? And very few silver linings with COVID. Very few. I mean, we learned how quickly we can make vaccines when we put our minds to it. That might mean something quite dramatic down the road. Who knows? We've kind of laid a little bit of a blueprint for that. Very few silver linings. But one of them I would suggest is that parents recognize what's going on in the school districts, and we want kids to be on campus, but I was a little surprised to see the effectiveness of some of the technology for delivery of content. And where I think that could play in a little bit is we may see more startups because of that. We may see for-profit education. We may see the idea that it's 2022 and kids have to go to a government-run school that's determined by their zip code. Completely archaic when you really think about it. So the best thing for the public school system, because we need good public schools. We're always going to be dependent on public schools. It's baked into our financing system with property taxes and everything else. So we need good public schools. But I think that the best thing for public schools and what offers the most hope is competition. If you've ever seen the numbers, Dr.
School
Bob,
choice is what it's all about. We have choices in everything in America. You have choices of what kind of car, what kind of dish soap, what kind of deodorant. You should have a decision about where to send your kid to school.
Absolutely right.
Right? Yeah. It has to be in the same state, I suppose.
Sure.
But other than that, and that would make the schools compete. And teach what the parents want them to teach.
And in 59 years of life, I have never seen competition make any company, any any
Worse.
agency or anything worse.
That's right.
Always, if you've ever seen the studies about charter schools, there's all the hysteria. We're going to lose public schools, going to lose registration, lose kids, lose funding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of responding to that like we would do in the business world, we spent a lot of years in management. If you had competition to deal with, you dealt with it, right? And you repriced and you
say,
you
what is the
downsized,
charter school doing better? Let's do that.
Right. So what they see from studies now is in these districts which with a strong commitment to charter schools, the numbers are improving in the public schools, in the conventional public schools. Nobody claimed to expect that, but it makes perfect sense because they were forced to compete. Monopoly is never a good thing, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah. Never a good thing.
Yep.
And the technology we have now of learning at home, learning on the web, I think is extremely useful at the college level. There's no reason why kids have to get up, kids in college have to get up at 7 a.m, trudge through the snow if you're in Wisconsin or whatever, and sit in a classroom and be given a lecture by a graduate student because the professors don't want to teach junior, the low-level classes, when indeed, because of the web, you could tune in and see the best lecturer in the world who could even be dead by that time, teaching you calculus, and you wouldn't have to, listen so carefully and worry about, can I take notes at the same time? You could pause it. It's miraculous. And I think, and I was, as you may know, I was a college professor. All right.
I didn't know that.
I was
knew
a
your
college
business
professor.
history. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was a professor at Tufts University, then a lecturer at MIT. And when my kids came of age, they were graduating high school, I said, college is a waste of time for most people. And the proof of this is the most successful people in the world, the wealthiest people, I'll define success as wealth, though there are other kinds of success, the most successful people in the world never finished college. Steve Jobs dropped out of Reed College. I think he took a few courses. Bill Gates didn't finish. Harvard.
They were anxious to deploy their
Zuckerberg
brilliance.
Figured it out, dropped out of Harvard. And then there's Michael Dell, dropped out of the University of Chicago.
Well,
so college is a waste of time and a waste of resource. And now, of course, there are certain things you have to go to college to learn. No, there's no question. I'm not saying in every case. But in most cases, for most students, it turns out to be a place where it's better drugs and better alcohol. And that's what college education has come down to for them. And the rate of increase of the expense of a college education has outpaced even the cost of medical care, which is through the roof. All right? And there's no justification of this. And the reason this came about is because guaranteed loans by the government.
Yeah.
So the colleges say, open the doors, let people in, right? And whatever you want to take a course in the history of the American indigenous people, for which you'll never be able to get a job.
And now they're sitting on billion-dollar endowments in so many of these schools.
They're sitting on huge endowments, and the government is paying the freight. So it's a mafia enterprise. Most universities should be shut down, and I think that getting away from bricks and mortar is the way it's going to happen.
Well, I do think we'll see change. I mean, Purdue is there are a few examples of institutions that have been an exception to the wild run-up, and 9, 10, 11 times the average rate of inflation, of conventional inflation. You're absolutely right on that. And hard to understand how that could possibly happen, right, until you go and you figure out, well, you throw all this revenue at something, and that's what's going to happen, right? But Purdue has a 3-year program. They have, so they haven't increased tuition in 11 or 12 years. Creativity. Who is the campus run by? I believe he's a former business executive of a Fortune 500 company. I'll send you something on it if I think of it. But so hopefully some of this awareness around the failure relative to the student, to the level of debt and expectation that's going on with 20-somethings today will help the industry, for lack of a better way to put it, of higher education, figure out some creative ideas, for how to to modify the expense a little bit and how to. I mean, kids are taking some courses that they took in high school. When I went to high school, your GPA, I think the max you could have was a 3 or something or whatever, And now these kids, they take the AP classes and they got 4.3s and 4.5s, and they still can't get into USC. We got a bunch of them around the campaign and stuff, and they're all competing with 4+ GPAs and stuff. So then they get to a college campus and they take some of the same courses over again.
Yeah, well, the answer really is the web, because you wouldn't have to limit how many students. You'd have to limit it to the size of your classroom.
Right.
It's absurd to limit it to the size of a classroom.
Yeah.
And it opens it up to everyone. Like, I was a lousy student in high school, okay? So I had trouble getting into college. A whole nother story. But if it's all on the web and you're not taking up a seat in a brick and mortar, you would let everyone in. Everyone can take every course. You have to take exams to get a degree, but why would you place any limits on anybody?
Yeah, and I think that's back to the silver lining piece. We might see more innovation in education, both in K through 12 and hopefully in the university and college system, because there's definitely a disconnect. I still do some financial planning. We have a nonprofit where we try to deliver some investment and financial acumen in lower income areas. Because as a regional management executive, I was part of all these initiatives where we would target, for lack of a better way to put, the super high net worth, the ultra high net worth we called it, then the mass affluent we called it. Well, none of these major corporations on Wall Street ever had programs to try to target modest to very low income, right? I mean, you could bump into an IRA pamphlet in a branch, but
maybe.
ultimately that doesn't happen so often, But none of these kids, a lot of these kids are not going through any kind of planning process, any kind of evaluation process at all. So that's something we build into our curriculum. But I'm excited about the path forward for education. To me, it's not a federal responsibility. Some of the equal education around the title stuff was helpful at the time, and I think mostly the 70s. Some of the distribution of those funds are not good now. It's lumpy. It's not matching the requirements and stuff. They would actually be better to get that part of it out to the states too. But I think we're going to see some innovation in education that's going to be exciting.
I'm hopeful for that.